You're listening to Asheville FM WSFM LP 103.3 Asheville. It is Asheville FM Spring Fun Drive. Go to www.ashevillefm.org.
Support the station today. Support your community radio station. Support Democracy Now! AshevilleFM.org. And thank you so much.
Show and I was like, oh, I wish I had done that. It was so cool. It was like computer incantations for world peace.
Should I say something? Hey guys, how are you?
You wanna do an invitation?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We're live.
Okay. Hey folks, I'm KP, the station manager here at Asheville FM. We want to welcome you down to 864 Haywood today. We're doing a fun drive this week, and we have some tables here with some great volunteers. We have some coffee, records for sale. All those things that help us support the station during the week of fundraising. So come on down. Meet Jess, our volunteer coordinator.
Hi!
Everybody's excited about it.
Everyone's excited. How could you not be?
This is why they started the war. You do not sit down behind the table and talk about some kind of demilitarization,
Yeah, it's a nice,
some kind of denazification.
Your comments. President Zelensky insisted on Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity after suggestions he could concede on the status of the eastern Donbas region, and reports Moscow would seek to split the country in two in a, quote, Korean scenario.
Because they only collect.
Meanwhile, U.S. officials have had to walk back remarks made by President Biden during a Saturday speech from Poland.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, and freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain retired.
The White House Congress rushed to do damage control on Biden's unscripted comment about Putin, saying the U.S. is not seeking regime change in Russia, as analysts warned it could derail attempts to negotiate with Moscow. On Saturday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the Doha Forum in Qatar, asking oil and gas-producing countries to up their output to reduce reliance on Russian imports. This comes as new data reveal Western oil
Hola amigos de
giants,
JMPRO TV,
including
una
BP,
invitación,
Shell,
pueden venir aquí a apoyarnos, estamos
Nearly
afuera de
$100
Asheville FM en
billion
864
Russian
a
fossil
Haywood
fuel
Road.
projects since
Tenemos
its 2014
bastantes
invasion of Crimea.
cosas para
The
compartir,
analysis
como
was
café,
released by
bocaditos,
Global
también
Witness,
hay
Greenpeace USA,
vinilos, discos de
Change
vinilo,
International.
diferentes merchandising para ustedes. Vengan a cooperar con su radio comunitaria que hace posible que la neta radio y todos los programas de JMPRO TV estén al aire. Los esperamos.
The annual event had taken place virtually for the past 2 years due to the pandemic. This is German activist Luisa Neubauer speaking from Berlin.
We see now that we are in a war that is being financed by fossil fuels, that we need to be speaking about fossil fuel. And today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, Germany is giving Putin millions of euros for his coal, oil, and gas. There is no such thing as an isolated crisis. If we want to separate ourselves from that crisis and live everywhere in peace and freedom and safety, then we need to move away from fossil fuel.
Scientists have observed the collapse of the ice shelf in eastern Antarctica for the first time since satellite images began. The ice shelf on March 15th came as the region experienced a heat wave with temperatures soaring by as much as 70 degrees Fahrenheit above normal in some areas. Meanwhile, marine biologists warn Australia's Great Barrier Reef is experiencing another mass bleaching event after ocean temperatures in the area rose 7 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. It's the fourth major die-off of coral along the world's largest reef system since 2016. In Yemen, at least 8 people were reported killed following overnight airstrikes by the Saudi-led coalition this weekend. The attacks came just hours after Houthi rebels announced a 3-day truce and said they would agree to peace talks if Saudi Arabia stopped its strikes and blockade of Yemen and removed foreign forces from Yemen. On Friday, a Houthi attack on an oil storage facility in Saudi Arabia triggered a massive fire in the port city of Jeddah. This comes as the U.S.-backed war on Yemen is entering its 8th year, with residents facing a worsening humanitarian crisis. Millions have been uprooted and are on the brink of famine. This is a displaced man speaking from the Darwan camp near Sana'a.
Egypt to begin with, we have no livelihood. We're lost. People are lost. It's as if we are buried underground, like a tree that cannot bloom. Our children and I are destitute. We have no income, nothing. We pray to God that this war will stop across all of Yemen.
In pandemic news, Chinese authorities have launched a 2-part lockdown on its largest city of Shanghai, shutting down half the city at a time for mass COVID testing amidst an ongoing surge. Shanghai has moved 26 million people. In other coronavirus news, the Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has tested positive for COVID-19 and will work in isolation. The announcement came one day after Bennett met with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was in Israel for a rare summit with 4 Arab countries that established diplomatic ties with Israel in 2020: Bahrain, Egypt, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates. On Sunday, Blinken addressed the Iran nuclear deal, saying the U.S. believed a renewal of the landmark 2015 agreement is the best path to ensure Iran does not develop nuclear weapons. In other news from Israel, the Islamic State claimed responsibility for an attack that killed 2 Israeli police officers in the northern city of Hadera on Sunday. El Salvador's Judicial Assembly has approved a 30-day state of exception following reports of at least 62 homicides attributed to gangs Saturday, the most violent day in El Salvador in decades. Another 14 killings were reported Friday. Salvadoran lawmakers passed the decree after 3 in the morning Sunday following demands from President Nayib Bukele, whose government has been accused of abuse of power and human rights violations. Multiple constitutional rights have been suspended, including the right to assembly. The decree also allows for extended administrative detention. The president also ordered a 24/7 isolation and lockdown of accused gang members currently in prison. In the United States, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has announced plans to start sending immigrants and asylum seekers to two troubled immigration jails, the Ottowa County Detention Center in Gadsden, Alabama, and the Glades County Detention Center in Moorhaven, Florida. The agency also said Friday it would scale back the use of two other facilities in North Carolina and Louisiana. The move comes after mounting pressure from immigrant justice advocates who helped expose the squalid and dangerous conditions faced by people imprisoned at these ICE jails. In more immigration news, Salvadoran journalist Manuel Duran has been granted asylum in the United States. Duran was first arrested in 2018 while covering an immigration rally in Memphis. He was detained for over 15 months. Duran was released from ICE custody in 2019 but continued to face deportation. He's the founder of the Spanish-language news site Memphis Noticias. Duran has lived in the U.S. since 2006 after fleeing El Salvador. The White House is unveiling a new tax plan that would establish a minimum 20% tax rate on all U.S. households worth more than $100 million. If approved by Congress, the billionaire minimum income tax would apply only to the top 100th of 1% of U.S. tax filers. Experts estimate the tax could raise $215 billion from just the 10 wealthiest billionaires over the next decade. A vast trove of retail data recently obtained by ProPublica shows many of the richest billionaires, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, paid little or essentially zero income tax in recent years. Amazon workers in New York began casting votes Friday in a highly anticipated union election that could result in the company's first ever unionized warehouse in the U.S. Voting continues until Wednesday. Meanwhile, the National Labor Relations Board is starting to review ballots from the redo of the Bessemer, Alabama Amazon union vote, which ended last week. And several Hollywood stars were before the Academy Award ceremony Sunday night. Ariana DeBose won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her role in West Side Story. She becomes the first openly queer woman of color to win the category.
You see a queer, openly queer woman of color, an Afro-Latina, who found her strength in life through art. And that's what I believe we're here to celebrate. So that anybody who's ever questioned your identity, or find yourself living in the gray spaces, I promise you this, there is indeed a place for us.
Also made history as the first deaf man to win an Oscar in an acting category for his supporting role in the film Coda. Danny Glover received the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award for his decades of activism fighting against war and for social, economic, and racial justice. And in a shocking Oscars moment, actor Will Smith rushed the stage and slapped Oscars presenter, comedian Chris Rock in the face after Rock joked about Smith's Will Smith returned to his seat and shouted at Rock to, quote, keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth, unquote. Rock said he will not press charges against Smith. Later in the evening, Will Smith won the Best Actor Award for his performance in King Richard. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he's open to Ukraine becoming a neutral country, but said such a decision could only be made by a nationwide referendum after Russian troops withdraw. Ukraine and Russia are expected to resume talks Tuesday in Istanbul, Turkey. This comes as the United Nations reports more than 3.8 million Ukrainian refugees have fled the country since the start of Russia's invasion. About 2.2 million other refugees have gone to Poland, where President Biden visited over the weekend. In a speech in Poland Saturday, Biden appeared to endorse regime change in Moscow.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. For free people, we will have a different future. future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and freedom, hope and light, decency and dignity, freedom and possibilities. God said this man cannot remain.
The White House quickly tried to walk back Biden's remark. In a statement, a White House official said the president's point is that Biden would be allowed to exercise power over his neighbors or the region. He was not discussing Putin's power in Russia or regime change. Earlier on Saturday, Biden also described Putin as a butcher when questioned by a reporter.
Why of all the
Dealing every day with Vladimir Putin. I mean, look at what he's done to these people. What does it make you think? He's a butcher.
On Sunday, French President Emmanuel Macron openly warned against using language that could escalate the crisis in Ukraine.
This type of wording as I continue the whole discussion with President Putin. What do you want to do collectively? We want to stop the war that Russia has launched in Ukraine without waging war and without escalation. And through diplomatic means, the objective is to obtain a ceasefire and complete withdrawal of troops. If that is what we want to do, we should not escalate things, neither with words nor actions.
We begin today's show with two guests. One is a Democratic Congressmember from California, the House Armed Services Committee. And Andrew Basovich is the president and co-founder of the anti-war think tank. Professor Basovich taught international relations and history at Boston University. He's author of several books, including After the Apocalypse, America's Role in a World Transformed. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's begin with Congressmember Ro Khanna.
Well, that's why we love you.
President
Help us do that.
Biden's
I wanna,
comments,
like,
essentially endorsing regime change for Putin.
Let me be very clear. The United States policy is not of regime change. There's no support in the Congress, certainly among Democrats, for a policy of regime change. Many of us have been opposed to regime change policy in this country over the last 20 years. I think President Biden was speaking about the extraordinary frustrations with Putin's brutal campaign of killing and targeting women and children, and he was speaking from the heart. And I'm glad that the White House has explicitly clarified that the goal is not regime change, and ultimately we need a negotiated end to this war and a ceasefire.
He made the comment off script, apparently, not in the teleprompter, right after talking about the Russian protesters, which seemed to suggest
tabling and, all of that. So.
He did, and I think the president was meeting with Ukrainian refugees. I think he's seeing the same horrific images that we are out of Mariupol and other places where the Russians are literally bombing places that have children there, that have women there. And I think he was speaking to the crimes that Putin is committing against the Ukrainian people, against humanity. That expression should not translate into any role for the United States to affect regime change in Ukraine. Washington has been crystal clear that that's not the United States policy. What we have to be doing is supporting Zelensky in his desire to bring a ceasefire and a negotiation. Will succeed in annexing Ukraine. That doesn't mean that they may not succeed in destroying Ukraine and causing loss of lives. The people who suffer the most from the prolonged war are the Ukrainian civilians. We need to do everything we can to protect life and bring the war to an end.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken attempted to walk back Biden's comments Sunday. He was speaking in Jerusalem.
It's easier to talk about what I don't. 2,000 years of radio is very high.
Yesterday morning. I was on there right before that yesterday morning.
Oh, yeah?
Or anyone else.
Yeah, it helps me.
As you know, and as you've heard us say repeatedly, we do not stop regime change in Russia or anywhere else.
Thank you so much.
All right, so how much do you want to donate?
I was going to do 20.
Okay.
I think I'm a little less sympathetic.
That's awesome.
President Biden is a seasoned statesman. He should have learned to think before he speaks. I think that his comment was reckless.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good day.
Let's reverse the situation. Imagine if President Putin said, at some public event that he intended to annex all of Ukraine.
Where did you move from?
And that subsequently his subordinates tried to quote unquote walk back that comment. I'm pretty sure the U.S. government would say, hey, wait a second. Putin is the guy in charge. His words are authoritative. So I think Biden, this war has to end in a negotiated settlement. The terms have to be agreeable to President Zelensky. We have absolutely no business inserting U.S. views into what the war's end should look like.
Do you think it's going to make it harder to negotiate? And how central do you think should be Biden's role in negotiation towards a ceasefire? We were just speaking with Yanis Varoufakis last week, the former finance minister of Greece, who said that clearly Biden should be playing a key role, could force ceasefire negotiations.
I'm not in agreement. We are a party to this war only indirectly. There's no question about who's responsible for this catastrophe. There's no question about who's in the right. But it seems to me that the responsibility to negotiate with the Russians, to come to a settlement that is agreeable to Ukrainians, that belongs to President Zelensky. There is this notion, again, carried over from probably the end of World War II, that the President of the United States functions as some kind of a global monarch. That kind of thinking is obsolete, and I think actually this episode illustrates the extent to which that kind of obsolete thinking complicates things. Biden should stay out and should keep his mouth shut.
Let's go back to President Biden speaking on Saturday.
The Kremlin wants to portray NATO enlargement as an imperial project aimed at destabilizing Russia. Nothing is changing the truth. NATO is a defensive alliance. It has never sought the demise of Russia.
Let's go first to Congressman Barokana on this issue, and going back also to the original concerns of Russia, of NATO's expansion, nearly doubling the size when promises have been made early on from Republican and Democratic administrations not to go an inch eastward, which certainly has done since that time, and how this might look in a future ceasefire.
First, let me just say that the American president does have a leadership role. I mean, we shouldn't outsource diplomacy just to President Macron or Europe. Theodore Roosevelt famously brought peace between Russia and Japan. I agree that President Zelensky should have the say in what would be acceptable to the Ukrainian people, but our involvement in seeking aggressive diplomacy and helping facilitate aggressive diplomacy, I think is necessary and welcome. My view on the war is that this is clearly Putin's aggression. If you just read what Putin has written himself, he has a view in an essay he published of a greater Russia, a greater Russia that he thinks Ukraine is part of, that he thinks Ukraine is central to. We can debate at some other point about NATO expansion, and there are obviously respected people like Baker and Kennan and others who have a view, but I don't think that debate is healthy now, because Putin is grasping at straws to justify an invasion that I think was clearly illegal and does not have to do with NATO, but has to do with his view of a greater Russia.
Your response to this as well, Andrew Basil.
Well, certainly I agree in the immediate sense that Russia is the aggressor in this war. They started it. There's no getting around that. That said, if we have an interest in understanding how we came to this tragic circumstance, it seems to me that we have to acknowledge the recklessness of NATO expansion that happened in the wake of the Cold War, contrary to promises made by senior American statesmen in the face of warnings by other senior American statesmen, simply to label NATO as a defensive alliance, I think is fundamentally misleading. The expansion was aggressive, was undertaken at Russia's expense, and has to be considered as one factor explaining how we got to where we are today. Again, to emphasize that is not to justify Putin's aggressive actions, but it seems to me that if we want to avoid these kinds of mistakes, we should at least try to understand how we got to the present circumstance.
The issue of NATO, the increasing militarization. I mean, you for a long time have been a fierce critic of increasing military budgets, but you seem to have taken a different approach when it comes to Ukraine. When you say we've got to shore up Zelensky right now, explain exactly what you mean.
Well, I think this is, in my view, a just war. I mean, I think that the Ukrainian sovereignty is under attack. Putin is clearly the aggressor. This is not a situation of an unjust or a war that has no purpose. This is the Ukrainian people fighting for their rights, for their sovereignty. And I do think that supporting Ukraine with the military assistance that we've provided, with the economic assistance that we provided, and having the punishing sanctions on Russia is the best chance to have a ceasefire. And that strategy, I think, has to end in a negotiated settlement. So I'm not for a war in any way with Russia. I'm not for a no-fly zone. I'm not for escalation with Russia. But I think that the best chance of getting to a negotiated settlement is to have the Ukrainians put up a tough fight, which they are, to have punishing sanctions, and at the same time pursue aggressive diplomacy.
So, Congressman Burkhan, I want to ask you about U.S. arms transfers to Ukraine. In 2018, you helped push Congress to pass a bill that included a provision barring arms, training, or other assistance to the far-right Azov Battalion, which is now part officially of the Ukrainian National Guard. At the time, you said in a statement, quote, "White supremacy and neo-Nazism are unacceptable and have no place in our world. I'm very pleased that the recently passed omnibus prevents the U.S. from providing arms and training assistance to the neo-Nazi Azov Battalion fighting in Ukraine. This is just one of many reasons why
influences, and it may still have some of those influences, but it's less than 1% of the entire Ukrainian army. Do I wish that none of the arms that we're supplying get to the Azov Battalion? Of course I do. But the point is that right now the most urgent matter is the defense of Ukrainian sovereignty, and that's why I support giving the Ukrainian people arms. Hopefully none of it gets to the Azov Battalion, but that is less than 1%. That shouldn't prevent us from defending Zelensky in terms of providing support he needs to defend Russia. The world is complex. It's never easy choices. My view right now is the urgency of the defense of Ukraine to get to a negotiated settlement outweighs the risk that some of those arms may end up in the hands of the Azov.
Are there any stipulations put in to prevent that?
Well, the 2018 law is still on the books. I'm sure that the administration is taking every precaution to not have that happen. But I think that the view is that we have to get them the anti-tank and missile and anti-aircraft missiles that are necessary, which are, by the way, largely defensive missiles, which are largely to prevent Russia from taking over Ukraine. And I support the administration in that policy.
Let me ask Andrew Vasevich if you are concerned that this massive influx of weapons will prolong the war.
Well, I agree with Congressman Khanna that we need to support Ukraine against Russia. And without having detailed understanding of the facts on the ground, it appears pretty clear that in addition to Ukrainian resolve, the introduction of foreign weapons, particularly anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons, have played a key role in ensuring that up to this point, the Ukrainian defense effort has been successful. So that's the right policy. Now, when we get to matters like the Azov Battalion, I think what we're bumping into is the reality that even in a war such as this, where the line between good and evil seems to be pretty clear, there are all kinds of complicating factors that have to be acknowledged. And it seems to me that this is where, for example, the ill-advised comments by President Biden have to be part of the conversation. This is not simply a black and white war, and we will confront the grays in between when the war finally ends, and we begin sorting through the wreckage caused by this catastrophe, and when we then begin to ask more seriously, how did this come about?
Congressmember Ropana, before we go, I wanted to ask you about the big oil windfall profits tax, the bill you introduced earlier this month, and also President Biden's unveiling today this new tax plan that would establish a minimum 20% tax rate on all U.S. households worth more than $100 million, called the billionaire's tax.
Nice meeting everybody.
Let me just say how strongly I support the president's policy for minimum tax on billionaires. We could even go further. A lot of the billionaires are in my district. They keep sending me my district back to Congress, and I keep saying, let's raise the taxes here so that we can help the rest of the country, which hasn't participated in the prosperity. It's high time that people who have made billions of dollars pay the same tax as teachers and as people who are in service jobs, and this is a first step towards that. I hope it will pass. I don't see why any Democrat wouldn't get behind it. On the windfall profits tax, that's something I've done with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. The reality is that oil companies are having record high profits. They are putting most of that money into stock buybacks. I think $44 billion that Exxon, Chevron, BP, and Shell have given to their shareholders and to their dividends. What we need to do is have that relief at the pump. And so what we say is if they're going to charge more than $66 a barrel, then they will pay a 50% tax on that, and we're going to send checks, we call it an inflation rebate, quarterly checks to working class Americans, those making under $150,000, so that they have some relief for the high gas prices. One final point, Amy, if we really care about, at the end of the day, not being dependent on petrostates like Russia, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, we need to have a moonshot on renewable energy in this country. It's not just for climate change, it's also for national security.
Well, I want to thank you both for being with us. Congressman Ropana, member of the House Armed Services Committee, Andrew Basovich, retired Colonel, Vietnam War vet, president of the anti-war think tank Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Next up, we'll look at the plight of African students who fled Russia's war in Ukraine only to be detained by European border officials. Stay with us.
Well, you're listening to Asheville FM at 103.3 FM and streamed at ashevillefm.org. This is Democracy Now! Right here on Asheville FM, and I'm the host, Dr. Bob. After my show Living Well, that's on Mondays 8 to 10 a.m., I stick around for an extra hour to be the host of Democracy Now! Make sure that you get a chance to hear it in its entirety. It is the Asheville FM Spring Fund Drive, and so I'm just going to take a little bit of a break from Democracy Now! To tell you what we've got going on here at the station, and about what we're trying to accomplish in the Spring Fund Drive, where we're looking to raise $30,000 in this coming week, and we are already about 25% there after a big weekend, and we're getting off to a great start on Monday. We have four donations that have taken place in the last few hours. Robert got us started. just before the top of the hour, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for your donation, and he let us know, let's celebrate freedom of the press. And I can support that wholeheartedly. And that's why Democracy Now! Is on the air, and that's why Asheville FM exists, to be the voices of the community and to have the kind of freedom that we want to have with the press. And next, I also want to thank Paul for your donation during the Democracy Now! Hour. It really means a lot to us. It's New Member Monday right now on March 28th, as it always is on the fund drive. And if you make a donation right now, a monthly donation for the year, it's going to be matched by the generous folks at Appalachian Realty Associates, who are one of our business sponsors for our show. So whatever donation you make, as we've had a few here, it's going to be matched, especially if it is a new member Monday. You also get, if you make a $60 donation, as Paul and Richard did, you're going to get the new Asheville FM t-shirt with its great design. If you give a donation of $103, which is what Robert gave, he's going to get the Asheville FM cap. And if you can make a donation of $365, we're going to send you that shirt and cap as a big thank you gift. We're also going to be entered into a raffle if you give a donation for every day.
Oh, yeah.
Today there's going to be tickets for Patty Griffin with Parker Millsap at the Diana Berthen Theater on April 29th. We're going to give a big shout out to the Orange Bill for those tickets. There's going to be prize packs with the Gypsy Queen Market, New Stock, and Baton Playworks gift certificates. And Earth Seeds is going to offer a 45-minute session for a tarot reading. Food donations also today are coming from the White Labs. We want to thank them for their pizza. And we've also got some free coffee right out front. The Asheville FM. Go to ashevillefm.org and click on that big red donate button. And we sure would appreciate, as always, your support of Asheville FM. Now back to Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, right here on Asheville FM.
Over 75,000 foreign students in Ukraine. And we were able to confirm for these 4 students that I was mentioning that they're held in one long-term detention facility that's 40 minutes away, a 40-minute drive from Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Initially, what happened is that we were contacted by activists who were saying that they were in touch with foreign students claiming to be in detention. We were given the address, and I went to this detention center. I said that I was pressed. I gave the 4 students' names, and the guards of that detention center told me to wait. They went in, and then they came back out and told me, yeah, these 4 names are inside, and actually there are 20 other young African people who fled Ukraine who are in this camp. And then later on, we managed to obtain an official letter from the Polish border guard confirming that there were 52 people, third-party nationals who fled the Ukrainian conflict in detention. And that was on March 15th. They confirmed 52 people. There could be more, and we're aware of 6 people having been recently released.
This letter you obtained from Poland's border police admitting 52 third country nationals who had fled Ukraine had been taken to detention facilities in the weeks after Russia's invasion. If you can talk more about that, and you're in Dakar, Senegal now, where are the students from around Africa? Are they from Senegal? Are they from Nigeria?
So the students that we're very much aware of, and we've also been speaking to their family members. We've spoken to several of them inside the center. They're from Cameroon and Nigeria. We don't know where the other people being held in that camp are from. What we do know, what I've heard very, very recently, is that there's also at least one African family that was held in one of the long-term detention centers. So that family was a Nigerian man, their child, and a Kenyan woman. They've been released, as far as we know, a few days ago, but that is to say that there's reason to believe that there may be other families held in detention, in long-term detention centers. We've also been speaking to the Cameroonian and to the Nigerian embassies in Poland and in Berlin, and they're saying that they do not know why their nationals are being detained. They're working towards securing the release of their citizens, and it seems that they've been able to secure the release of 6 Nigerians so far.
Can you talk about the temporary protection directive that was invoked by the EU on March 4th? What it means, and does it apply to students of African origin?
So the temporary protection directive is historic in the sense that all of the European countries agreed for the first time in 20 years to open their borders and to protect and to grant residency, to grant also allowances to all of the Ukrainians fleeing the conflict. That temporary directive doesn't lay things out quite as clearly for third-party nationals. It recommends that EU countries should facilitate their safe passage back to their country of origin if that country is safe, and that they should provide humanitarian protection. We've been speaking to lawyers about what's been going on now, and they've been saying that it goes against EU law to detain people, because this temporary directive does say that countries should facilitate passage, should give humanitarian access, and that holding them in long-term detention facilities where they are not provided with legal help, where they've been made to sign documents that they haven't been able to understand, and where they're, in fact, these are prisons, that this is contrary to EU law. But this temporary protection directive is not as clear when it comes to the rights of third-party nationals, and I think that's also where the issue lies, that it doesn't guarantee the same rights to these people, and it allows European countries to sort of pick and choose who they let in and to decide how they treat these people.
Even Austria was holding some of these students?
Yes, so the latest information that we've been getting from the Nigerian diaspora is that in Austria, one student was detained. In Estonia, one student was detained. And there's reason to be concerned that we're going to be hearing more and more of these cases. Because there's a lack of EU clarity on the
contrast between how Ukrainians are being treated. I mean, the pictures of the kindergarten children going into a school and the whole class standing up and applauding them. President Biden going to Poland to applaud the Polish government for being so welcoming to millions of Ukrainians. Have you heard, if you can comment on that, and finally, the conditions in these jails?
It's absolutely striking to all the people who have been working to help the thousands of people that have been trying to enter the EU for the past years, that have been fleeing conflicts in Syria, in Iraq, the difference in treatment. It was interesting in Poland, and striking in Poland especially, to speak with people who've been assisting refugees from the Belarus border. And that near the Belarus border, it's basically a situation where you have Polish border guards that are pushing people back into the Belarus, freezing Belarus borders. Just last week, there Syrians, Iraqis who were pushed back. We know that at least one more person died. At least 20 people have died at that border. So for people seeing this difference in treatment, these double standards based on where people sort of left a lot of these people, helpless. And now the fact that people are being treated differently based on where they're from, even if they're fleeing the same exact conflict, just makes these double standards even more obvious.
Well, we will continue to follow this. Maude Julien, I want to thank you for being with us. Investigations editor of Lighthouse Reports, which published this investigation with The Independent, Der Spiegel, Mediapart, Radio France about African students fleeing Ukraine being detained by European border officials. Maude Julien was speaking to us from Dakar, Senegal. Next up, we go to Jamaica, as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have just wrapped up a week-long visit to former British colonies in the Caribbean. The royal visit was met by protests and demands for reparations. We'll speak with the Jamaican MP. Stay with us.
Well, you're listening to Asheville FM at 103.3 and at AshevilleFM.org. I'm Dr. Bob, the host of Asheville FM on Mondays, and hope you're enjoying the show. It is Asheville FM Spring Fun Drive. Programming support is brought to you by Static Age Records. Static Age buys and sells vinyl records and cassettes, hosts live music in its back room, and serves beer, wine, and sake. Located at 110 North Lexington Avenue in downtown Asheville, Static Age is open 7 days a week from noon till 7 p.m. Their email is staticage.nc@gmail.com. Programming support is also brought to you by Appalachian Realty Associates. Located at 23 Arlington Street in Asheville, they are a local and independent real estate company serving the Asheville area since 1979. More info is at AppalachianRealty.com. And Appalachian Realty is actually a big part of the New Member Monday Spring Fun Drive today, as they are matching any new monthly subscribers. A lot of these fun drives are really just paying the bills. And the kind of costs that come with running community radio. And knowing how much is coming in every month is really a great thing for making sure that we've got what we need to pay the bills. If you make a $60 donation, you're going to get a t-shirt. A $103 donation is going to get you a hat. And a $365 donation today is going to get you both a shirt and hat as just a thank you so much for supporting us. But we're also going to be entered into a raffle with your donation today, where you can win tickets to Patty Griffin, prize packs from Gypsy Queen Market, New Stock, and Bat and Clay Work, and so there's lots of many good reasons to get to Asheville FM, and what you're really doing is supporting local radio, community-centered radio, that not only is bringing you just an amazing diversity of music, but you're also getting so many talk shows and informative shows, and the Asheville FM News Hour. You're getting Spanish-based programming, which I learned today is the only station in town, community radio, that's offering Spanish-speaking shows. And one of those new shows that came on this year was the Green Assistant Radio with Walker Sproul. She always comes in and says hi to me when she's getting ready to go. Wendy was also my guest this morning. The Asheville FM station manager is going to be joining her today, and we're going to be talking about farming here in the area, and about food justice as part of how we can live green in our lives. So coming up 10 a.m. and she'll be telling you too all the good reasons that you could make a donation to Asheville FM. I am out of here for the day. Thank you so much for the donations that did come in. Let's keep them going at AshevilleFM.org. And now, the remainder of Democracy Now!
And personalities to trump, the more important issues at hand. So that became more viral, I guess, to subdue the issues of reparations and what the country was actually feeling. And indeed, many CARICOM nations are feeling at this point in terms of how we would like to, engage the United Kingdom government on where we need to now go as a region.
I'm looking at some signs that say no to the royal family in all different ways. What are the steps for Jamaica to become a republic and remove Queen Elizabeth as head of state?
Can I ask you a favor real quick?
Okay, you can either go for a referendum or you can amend the constitution. So you can either put it to a vote of the country or we can amend the constitution. So it's not a difficult thing to do. Barbados has done it, and they did it with elegance, and I think they were very respectful in the way that they have done it. And we have significantly been calling for Jamaica to have its own head of state, removing the monarchy as our head of state, not only because we believe that as a nation we have the ability to do it on our own and to chart our course into the future, but also because Jamaicans don't really benefit from having monarchy as their head of state. Ordinary Jamaicans, it's very difficult for Jamaicans to get a visa.
Do you want it square for Instagram, or do you want it?
Certainly, this region, Jamaicans as well, after World War II, were part of the Windrush Generation, and we saw what happened with many of them last year and the appreciation that they gave. I mean, now they're trying to step up. But we have a lot of respect for nations all over the world. The beauty of who we are as Jamaicans is we will tell you how we feel. It doesn't mean after that we won't play a game of dominoes or have a drink. But we are unabashed in our resolve to make you understand that there were atrocities, there are crimes against humanity. The systemic injustice and racial indignation that black people feel as a result of 300 years of being bludgeoned by another race, and in fact by the monarchy.
Maybe you can set your camera up to point at this. We can do like a living portrait. Like
which looks to some of the dialogue that we'd like to have and some of the things that we believe.
Where is this live streaming to? Oh, okay.
The only time that the UK has paid reparations was in Kenya to the Kenyans for the uprising between the Mama and the UK government in seeking their freedom. So
what's the Facebook page it's going to? What's the Facebook page?
The way that
I was going to the Facebook.
Caribbean per se, there were no health facilities, there were no economic opportunities, because what Britain did was to pay the slave owners and the plantation owners when slavery came to an end for their losses. The slaves never got anything, and so if you have that kind of setback from them, but what we're saying and what I said also in the Guardian piece is that we should be used as a tipping point for the royals, the young royals in particular, to reset how they see their leadership charting a way into the future with more enthusiasm for a fairer global society.
You mentioned the Windrush Generation, and if you can explain for the many who are not familiar with this population in Britain, that Britain actually tried to deport after a period of time. Explain who they are.
The Windrush Generation, and thank you for that, the Windrush Generation are my grandmothers, the older generation after World War II. So when World War II ended, the United Kingdom called for able-bodied persons from the colonies to come and help rebuild the railroads, the roads, the buildings after the war. And it was Jamaicans and others who went to the United Kingdom to rebuild those facilities. They're the ones who rebuilt it. They're the ones who said put their sweat, their time, their effort. And what had happened was some of them and some of their children were not properly documented. And quite recently, many of them were deported after so many years of being there. And it was a scandal in the UK, and the Foreign Office had to very, very quickly, because it was heinous, it was hurtful, it was unbelievable, certainly to many of us in Jamaica and the Caribbean who had relatives there from way back as the 1950s. and the late 1940s to recognize that this had actually happened, and that's the Windrush Generation. They were the ones.
How are you?
I want to go back to Prince William speaking in Jamaica.
Oh, yeah.
I strongly agree with my father, the Prince of Wales, who said in Barbados last year that the appalling atrocity of slavery forever stains our history. I want to express my profound sorrow. Slavery was abhorrent, and it should never have happened.
So that is Prince William. And I'm wondering, MP Hannah, if you had a conversation with either him or Kate Middleton, but most importantly, of course, what exactly you're calling for. If you can talk about the whole reparations movement, the CARICOM Reparations Commission that you were a part of a few years ago, what are we talking about here?
Well, you have seen that I said that I didn't think both Prince William and Prince Charles were very bold or courageous in what they said. Because condemnation without action is hollow. And so while we appreciate the royal regrets, which is what I said, it doesn't go far enough. What we would like to see is you condemn something, you say sorry for it, and you say, here's what we are going to do to right those wrongs of history. And what can happen, and Prince William is in a unique position now, with where the world is, to look to his leadership of shaping and charting a new, fairer global society, especially for Black people. And he would be remembered for that. So he should take up that 10-point CARICOM reparations plan. Let us look at it. Let us look at the healthcare requests that we're looking at, or suggestions. Let us look at the museums. Let us look at the technical transfer. Let us look at debt cancellation. Let us look, first of all, at the apology. Let us look at the fact that there was tremendous